part one of the graphic novel version of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So we will be reading pages 4 to 22. Here is a look at our characters. We've got Dr. Jekyll here over to the right, Mr. Hyde to the left. We have Mr. Utterson, Mr. Poole, and Mr. Einfield. A byroad in a busy section of London, 1886. The street appeared as a contrast to its dingy neighborhood, like a fire in a forest with its freshly painted shutters, well-polished brasses, and general cleanliness. The line of houses on the street was broken by a court, and just at that point lay a sinister block of building. Did you ever notice that door? It is connected with a very odd story in my mind. No. What is so special about that door? The door, which had neither bell nor knocker, was worn and discolored, and for almost a generation no one cared to repair it. Really, and what is that? Gabriel John Utterson, lawyer, serious, cold, and embarrassed in conversation, unsentimental, lean, long, dusty, dull, and yet somehow lovable. Richard Einfield, a city man, Utterson's cousin and friend. Well, Utterson, I was coming home from some place about 3 o'clock of a black winter morning. Street after street and all the folks asleep, street after street, all lighted up as if for a procession and all as empty as a church. Till I got into that state of mind when a man listens and listens and begins to long for the sight of a policeman. All at once I saw two figures, a little girl running from one side of the building and an old man coming from another. The two ran into each other, naturally enough, at the corner, and then came the horrible part, for the man trampled calmly over the child's body and left her screaming on the ground. It doesn't sound so horrible, but it was terrible to see. He wasn't like a man, he was like some road roller. I called out, began to run, and got hold of the man. I brought him back to the place where he had left the screaming child. Quite a large group had already gathered around her. He was perfectly cool and did not resist, but gave me such an ugly look that I started sweating. The girl's family members had gathered around her, and pretty soon the doctor, for whom she had been sent, appeared. The child was not hurt, just frightened, but there was one strange thing that happened. I had taken a dislike for the gentleman at first sight, so had the child's family, but the doctor's case was what struck me. He was the usual cut-and-dried doctor, about as emotional as a bagpipe. He was like the rest of us, but every time he looked at my prisoner, I saw the doctor turn sick and white with a desire to kill him. I knew what was in his mind, just as he knew what was in mine. And killing being out of the question, we did the next best thing. Sir, you are in trouble, and make no mistake, you better listen to me. Everyone gathered around the man and started cursing him. Monster! Villain! If you have any friends or respect in London, we will ensure you lose them. This act of cruelty will be a scandal with your name at its center. We will make your name stink from one end of London to the other. In spite of the shouting, the man remained unfazed. If you choose to make a scandal out of this accident, I am naturally helpless. But, like any other gentleman, I would wish to avoid a scene. Name your figure. £100 for the child's family. He would have clearly liked to resist, but there was something about the lot of us that meant trouble, and at last he gave in. The next thing was to get the money. And do you know where he took us? To that place with the door. He took out a key, went in, and came back with £10 in gold and a check for the rest. Signed with a name that I can't mention, though it's one of the points of my story. It was a name very well known and often printed in the papers. But the signature was genuine. I pointed out to him that his behavior was very suspicious, because a man does not walk into a cellar door at 4 in the morning and come out with another man's check. But he was quite easy in sneering. Set your mind at rest. I will stay with you till the bank's open and then cash the check myself. So we all passed the night in my lodging and went to the bank in the morning. I said I had every reason to believe it was forgery, but it was not. The check was genuine. What? Are you sure? Yes, the man was really detestable, and the person who signed the check is celebrated and one of those people who do good to others. Blackmail, I suppose, an honest man paying for some mistake of his youth. Are you sure the drawer of the check does not live there? Yes, I noticed his address. He lives in some other part of the city. And you've never asked about the place with the door. No, I feel very strongly about asking questions. You start a question and it's like starting a stone rolling. I've made it a rule of mine, the stranger something looks, the less I ask. A very good rule, too. Yes, I think it is. But I want to ask the name of the man who walked over the child. Well, it was a man called Hyde. What sort of a man was he? There was something wrong with the way he looked, something completely hateful. I never saw a man I disliked so much. He must be deformed somewhere. He gives a strong feeling of deformity, although I couldn't see any. He was an extraordinary looking man, and yet I could see nothing out of the way. Are you sure he used a key to open that door? I know it seems strange if I do not ask you the name of the person who signed the check, it is because I know it already. If you have not been exact at any point, you had better correct it. I've been exact. The fellow had a key and he has it still. I saw him use it less than a week ago. Here is another lesson that we should not talk about such things. Let us promise never to talk about this incident again. With all of my heart, I shake hands on that, Richard. That evening, when Utterson came home, this news of Hyde and his character is most distressing. Is he the same Hyde as the one mentioned in Jekyll's will? Besides keeping it in trust, I had nothing to do with the will's creation, a fact that gives me both relief and worry. It says that in case of the death of Henry Jekyll, not only should all of his possessions pass into the hands of his friend and benefactor, Edward Hyde, but also that in case of Dr. Jekyll's disappearance or unexplained absence for more than 3 months, Edward Hyde should take Henry Jekyll's place immediately. I thought it was madness, but now I fear it is disgrace. If anyone knows anything about it, it will be Lanyon. Utterson kept the will back and left for Cavendish Square, where his friend Dr. Lanyon lived. Utterson, my friend, what a surprise. Lanyon, it's good to see you. I suppose, Lanyon, you and I must be the two oldest friends that Henry Jekyll has. I suppose we are, but I rarely see him now. Really? I thought the two of you would always keep in touch as you have a common interest in science. We had, but it's more than 10 years since Henry Jekyll became too impractical for me. He began to show signs of an unsound mind, and I have hardly seen him since. Why? What happened? He spoke such unscientific nonsense. This is a relief. They have only differed on some point of science. Did you ever come across a protege of his, one Hyde? Hyde? No, never heard of him. That night, as he lay asleep in the comfort of his room, Utterson was plagued by nightmares. Hyde, 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 where is your face? I must see your face. What wickedness have you planned? I must confront Hyde. I must see his face. Soon after, he was jolted awake by the discomfort. I will not let him win. If he is to be Mr. Hyde, I will be Mr. Seek. A few days later, by 10 o'clock, when the shops were closed and the byroad was very silent, Utterson went on a search for Mr. Hyde. There, is that the sound of footsteps? Surely this is him. Utterson could see what kind of man he would have to deal with. He gathered courage and walked up to him. Mr. Hyde, I think? Hyde shrank back, but his fear was only momentary. I see you are going in. I am an old friend of Dr. Jekyll's, Utterson of Gaunt Street. That is my name. What do you want? You must have heard my name. Meeting you by chance here, I thought you might let me in. You will not find Dr. Jekyll. He is away from home. Never mind. Will you do me a favor? With pleasure. What will it be? Will you let me see your face? Hyde seemed to hesitate, and then, as if upon some sudden thought, turned about with an air of defiance. Whether he did it consciously or not, it is not clear, but he turned toward light. Now I will know you. It may be useful. Yes, it is good we met, and you should have my address. My goodness, has he, too, been thinking of the will? And now, how did you know me? By description. Whose description? We have common friends, Jekyll, for instance. He never told you. I did not think you would lie. Mr. Hyde, that is not suitable language. The next moment, with extraordinary quickness, Hyde unlocked the door and disappeared into the house. The man is pale and dwarfish and gives an impression of deformity without any particular malformation. He has a displeasing smile, and he showed a sort of deadly mixture of timidity and boldness, and he spoke with a husky, whispering, and somewhat broken voice. After Hyde slammed the door on his face, Utterson started walking toward the other side of the building. All these are points against him, but even all of these together cannot explain the loathing and fear he inspires in me. There must be something else. There is something more. If I could find a name for it, the man seems hardly human. Poor old Henry Jekyll. If I ever saw a really evil man, it is your new friend. Lost in his thoughts, Utterson reached the front of the building and knocked. Is Dr. Jekyll at home, Poole? Mr. Utterson. No, I'm afraid he is out at the moment. I saw Mr. Hyde go in by the old laboratory door, Poole. Is it the right thing to do when Dr. Jekyll is away from home? Quite right, Mr. Utterson, sir. Mr. Hyde has the key. Your master seems to trust that man a great deal, Poole. Yes, sir. We all have orders to obey him. We see very little of him on this side of the house. He mostly comes and goes by the laboratory. Things cannot continue as they are, and imagine the danger. If Hyde suspects the existence of the will, he may grow impatient to inherit everything. Not finding Jekyll there, Utterson returned home. Poor Henry Jekyll, he is in serious trouble. He was wild when he was young. Yes, it must be the ghost of some old sin that Hyde is blackmailing him with. I must do my task if Jekyll will let me. If Jekyll will only let me. A fortnight later, Dr. Jekyll invited some old friends to a pleasant dinner. Ah, it's such a shame to call an end to this evening, my friends. When everybody had left, Utterson decided to speak to Jekyll. Poole, get me some brandy. I've been wanting to speak to you, Jekyll. Utterson, you are unfortunate to have a client like me. Remember that will of yours. I have never seen a man so distressed as you are, other than Lanyon. Lanyon is a good fellow, and I always mean to see more of him, but a pedant for all that, an ignorant, blatant pedant. I am not talking about Lanyon. I'm talking about your will. You know, I never approved of it. My will? Yes, certainly I know that. You have told me so, and I requested you to drop the matter. Well, I tell you so again. I have been learning something about Hyde. I do not care to hear more. I thought we had agreed to drop this matter. What I heard was repulsive. You do not understand my position. My position is a very strange one. It cannot be mended by talking. Jekyll, I'm your friend. You can trust me. Utterson, it is very good of you to say that. I would trust you before any man alive, but it is not what you think. Well, if that is what you want, this is a private matter, and I beg you to let it sleep. Since we have touched upon this business, there is one point I would like you to understand. If I am If I am taken away, Utterson, promise me that you will bear with Hyde and get his rights for him. I can't pretend that I will ever like him. I don't ask that. I only ask you to help him for my sake when I am no longer here. Well, I promise. Nearly a year later, in October, a maidservant who was looking out from her window witnessed a strange incident. Oh, such a lovely night, too lovely to sleep. What's this? A kind old man, and is that Mr. Hyde? She knew who he was, and that surprised her. Sir, may I trouble you a moment? My eyes fail me at times in the night, even on a bright October evening as this. Crack. Ah, no, why? And Mr. Hyde here is laughing. The next morning at Mr. Utterson's house, I'm afraid a terrible deed has been done, Mr. Utterson, and the victim had this package on him. We were hoping you could help us identify the man. Sure, Inspector. Give me a moment and I will be with you. Yes, I recognized him. I'm sorry to say that this is Sir Danvers Carew. Good God, sir, is it possible? This will make a great deal of noise. He was a minister of Parliament. And perhaps you can help us find the man who committed this heinous crime. A maid who witnessed the entire scene described this as the broken murder weapon. We found it rolled in a nearby gutter. No. Could it be? That rich wood, is that the cane I gifted to Henry? She recognized the killer, one Mr. Hyde. We would have discovered this sooner, but it seems she fainted. Is this Mr. Hyde a person of small stature? Particularly small and particularly wicked-looking is how the maid describes him. If you will come with me, I think I can take you to his house. Is this the house of Edward Hyde? Yes, sir, it is. Is the gentleman at home? No, sir, he was in very late last night, but went away again in less than an hour. Very strange. He went back in just an hour? Yes, sir, his habits are very irregular, and he's often absent. Very well. Then we wish to see his rooms. No, sir, that is just not possible. I better tell you who this person is. This is Inspector Newcomen of Scotland Yard. Oh, is Mr. Hyde in trouble? What has he done? He doesn't seem to be a very popular character. And now just let me and this gentleman have a look around. This is the home of Henry Jekyll's favorite, of a man who is heir to £250,000 sterling. He was trying to make sure not a penny was left behind, I see. Nice vintages, one and all. I can see him now raging about this room, checking his tracks, making sure nothing was left behind to link him to the murder. And like so many under the sort of pressure, he left before the job was done. Look here, a match. You can count on it, sir. I have him in my hand. He must have lost his hand, or he would have never left the stick.